Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing my review for the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I overall really enjoyed this movie. I thought of it as at least on par with the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Really funny throughout, really good character development, nice balancing of the different characters throughout. I don't think it's better on the level of going from Captain America to Winter Soldier or anything, but it's still a very well made movie and hits on most of the stuff that's going on with it. So we start off and we're in the 1980s on Earth, and we see Peter's father and mother tooling around in the 80s, and his father shows her this seedling thing that he has planted and everything, and talking about how he's seeding the whole galaxy with them and all that. It's like, okay, that's interesting, as they just kind of get closer and kissing and all that stuff. And then we jump into, well, right after Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. And we see that the team's kind of working more together, and that they're on a new mission to stop this interdimensional being from sucking off and taking these batteries from these people called the Sovereign. So we get this pretty cool scene where Rocket has set up this music thing, and actually Peter's like, no, you should be doing something else. That I even agree with Drax on this. No, why are you doing it? It's like, I know how you like your music and all that. Then we get to see little baby Groot tooling around, dancing and everything, and baby Groot works in this movie. He is not overly cute to the point of oh, it's just cute for the sake of it. There's actual development with Groot as a baby. He can't do as much as he could before, and he's still learning to do stuff. We see him dancing around the battlefield, waving to people, and Gamora's like, hey, how you doing? And we see him trying to fight things and everything and try and eat stuff, and Rocket comes in and tells him to not eat that, and it's seeing it around, and he's kind of ticked off at Drax for destroying the music thing, and tries to fight him and everything. And of course we see everybody fighting this monster that's trying to take these batteries and everything. So Drax, of course, is we can't hit his head. I'm going to do it from the inside. And jumps in, and everybody's like, he just did that, didn't he? So we see Drax then going at it from the inside. It's if it's impenetrable from the outside, it's going to be impenetrable from the inside. The hell. All right, Rocket, you and me, we're going to try and make it look up so we can get its cut at that's because it has this wound on its throat. And of course we see that Gamora is using a rifle instead of her sword, which Peter, of course, comments on. And they get it to a point where she's like, screw this, gets out her sword, chops it, and Drax comes out and says, I single-handedly defeated this thing, ah ha ha! It's okay. So they go to the High Priestess of the Sovereign, and of course you gotta watch out because they're very easily offended people. And they think that they're better than everybody, and of course seeing Rocket just saying all this stuff and not using the right eye to wink. It's oh, they're not conceited douchebags at all. Wink. It's oh shit. Okay. So they get their reward for completing their mission, and that is Nebula. They caught her trying to steal batteries, and they hand them over to the Guardians because Gamora wants to make sure that she's not doing any more stupid shit. So as they're leaving, Rocket reveals to Drax that he has stolen some batteries as well. He's like, So they're flying off and everything. Nebula's trying to get some food and all that, and the fruit's not ripe yet and all that. It's no, shut up. And they keep her locked up, and they're trying to fly away. And then the Sovereign send their pretty much drone fleet after them, which is controlled by people that makes cool 80s video game sounds, which I thought was a nice touch. And it just see them trying to go after and destroy the Guardians. And, of course, we get this point where we find out that Rocket stole the batteries, and Peter's that's not cool, man. And Rocket's it's funny, it's fine, we'll make some money off of it, who gives a crap? And, of course, throughout the movie, Rocket's being pretty much an asshole, but we find out that it's more the technique of, keeping people away so you don't get hurt yourself. And that leads into some problems in that they're both trying to fly the ship through this, asteroid field that's a quantum asteroid field where the asteroids will move, but they'll teleport essentially between places and times and everything, which was pretty cool. And the ship pretty much gets blown up and they crash land on a planet. They're saved, however, by what Rocket deems as a little man on a spaceship as he blows up the rest of the Sovereign fleet that's trying to get after him. So, of course, Gamora's berating them for being dicks, both of them, because either one of you could have gotten us through that asteroid field. And, of course, Rocket's feeling bad, but still in his dick mode and everything. And then that, of course, is when the little man on the spaceship comes down and we see Peter's father, Ego. And he's talking about how he's been searching for him, that Yondu was supposed to send him to Ego and everything, and it's feeling all nice and kind of cool. And it's like, oh, okay. And, of course, Peter's like, he's like, well, I was small, I could reach places that most adults couldn't, and he always threatened to eat me. He's like, okay, that's kind of weird. Hey, why don't you come with me? I'll talk to you about this, and we can figure out our own. And Gamora's like, well, do this. It's for you. I love the story of you telling about, like, Hasselhoff and going into the explanation that Peter would explain to kids that his dad was David Hasselhoff with Knight Rider, and, like, seeing Gamora kind of, like, mess it up. But, like, Peter doesn't like that story because he didn't have a dad. But Gamora likes that story about him because of what it reveals about his character and all that. How he wants that kind of family and will kind of do anything to kind of protect that, as we see throughout the movie. So, of course, Peter, Gamora, and Drax are the ones that go off while Rocket and Groot pretty much look after Nebula and try to fix the ship. While this is going on, we see Yondu and his crew celebrating on this one place, and we see him interact with another Ravager, like one of the top Ravagers, who's played by Sylvester Stallone. Oh, that's pretty cool, talking about how he was thrown out of the Ravagers and exiled because of the things that he was doing with children, and like child trafficking and all that. Holy shit. And then, of course, they were approached by the Sovereigns to go and capture the Guardians. So, while they're off on Ego, Yondu and his crew come down and pretty much surround Rocket, because Rocket has pretty much taken out a good amount of his crew with some pretty ingenious moves and everything, seen him laugh and everything. And he's pretty much in a bad spot. So Nebula talks Groot into releasing her to help Rocket. And, of course, Groot can't do much, and he's afraid for his friend. And he, of course, lets Nebula out. And we see that Yondu has no intention of giving Peter and the Guardians to the Sovereigns. He's like, hey, wait a minute, you have those, just give us the batteries. They wanted to give us $1 million for it. That's about $250,000. That'll work out. And, of course, everybody else is like, that's like a third. It's like, no, you don't know how to do math. That's like, what the hell? What? No! So, of course, this leads to a mutiny led by Taserface, which has some nice run out. And he's like, no, this is not going to work. And, of course, Nebula shoots off the thin mohawk portion of Yondu's head so that way he can't use his arrow. And, of course, then we get to see the whole mutiny and everything, all of his loyalist crew except for Kraglin, that's it. Kraglin is not killed, but Taserface is, like, gonna try and kill Yondu and Rocket, but he puts them in the cell, and of course I hate what they did to Groot. They, like, put him in a little suit and started, like, kicking him and, like, pouring stuff on him. He's like, hey, this will be our mascot. And it's just hard seeing Groot doing that stuff because, you know, when he's big, he can deal with stuff. And he's, like, walking and he's all wet and everything. And then he walks by. And we get this really funny scene of them trying to explain to Groot where to find Yondu's prototype Mohawk fin so he can control his arrow and, like, get him out. And just see him trying to figure this out. Now, granted, it could go on for... It almost got to a point where it went on a little too long, but I think it was a good thing to do to show how Groot is in that he doesn't know everything yet. He had getting pretty much blown up the way he was kind of messes with you. So seeing him kind of learn through and going through those processes kind of worked. So then they're able to get out, and Kraglin, of course, helped them, and they pretty much take out the whole crew, which was a pretty awesome action scene. We're seeing Yondu's arrow flying through, and Rocket just shooting the shit out of people, and then seeing the character development of, like, Yondu explaining to Rocket that they're one and the same. You push people away because you don't want to be hurt, and you don't think that you deserve the love and everything. So they blow up the ship and blow up Taserface and all that. And it was funny seeing Taserface die and like talking to the High Priestess and like, you tell him that it was Taserface. And then just seeing her laugh at his face was just amazing. So they're going off to Ego because Yondu learned about that they had actually taken Peter to Ego. He's like, no, why the fuck would you do that? So, of course, we also see them on Ego's planet, and we're learning, oh, Ego's a Celestial and has a brain, and he has pulled everything to this planet. And Mantis is important because she can, like, feel feelings and is one of the only ones that can make Ego go to sleep. And, of course, we see this cool scene with Peter and Ego connecting, playing catch, because he can control the energy field or whatnot that Ego can. And, as of course we're learning more about this, Mantis has something to tell Drax but isn't able to. And then we see that Nebula had taken her portion of the reward of the mutiny and flew up and is pretty much trying to kill Gamora. And, of course, Gamora does a badass moment where she picks up the guns from the ship because she had crashed it into a cave and pretty much used it to take out the ship, but still brought Nebula out and saved her. And we get more character development that way, where Nebula's talking about, you always beat me and you would always replace stuff, you were never my sister. And it's like, you were both children put in one hell of a shitty situation where you were forced to fight each other and the loser would have to be like screwed over somehow. Of course, like, it's hard to develop and figure that out when you're a kid. And just seeing that kind of develop, and we get towards the end of the movie, them having at least a mutual respect and being like, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wasn't trying to keep Thanos' thing going. We were both in a pretty shitty situation. So, of course, seeing that develop is a pretty good way. Then, as they're trying to exit the cave, they see all these bones and everything, and as we see Ego explaining to Peter that he has gone throughout the universe after he found life, that he wanted to spread himself more. That's what his seeds are, pretty much become all life throughout the universe. But in order to do this, he needed another Celestial to help him, so he's had all these children who have all been failures, except for Peter. And, of course, Peter was like, okay, maybe, because he shows him like this vision with his eyes, like, I can see eternity, which could be like another Marvel character because there's the actual embodiment of eternity that could possibly pop up. And then he's like, it broke my heart when I had to give her that tumor. And it's like, oh shit. So you killed his mother because it interfered with your purpose of spreading yourself throughout the whole galaxy. Okay, you're definitely the embodiment of Ego. So then he pretty much tries to use Peter as a battery and breaks his Walkman and everything. And it's like, oh god, this is pretty bad shit. And he starts doing his process throughout the universe and everything, but of course, Rocket and them appear, and so do the Sovereign. And the real big fight starts to ensue because Peter's pissed off. He's like, you shouldn't have killed my mom and broke my Walkman. And they, of course, he shoots Ego's body. He's like, you little pissant, and was going to like use him as a battery for like a couple millennia. And of course, they start going into the core of Ego to try and stop him. And he definitely works as a villain because it's not completely black and white. And of course, it's like, oh, your father's actually evil. Yeah, but it's more of a nuanced evil of being the ego and being completely self-centered on himself and not caring about others. It's a pretty good way to do it, to also show Peter's likenesses with Ego and differences. Because we also seen that Ego transformed into David Hasselhoff, which was a pretty funny cameo. And then just like not give a crap about what Peter actually wanted to do and what they could actually accomplish with the celestial power, only what his purpose was. So they're getting through and they kind of split up. Rocket's building a bomb and he's like asking for tape and everything because Groot needs to push one button and not the other one. So Groot goes through and pretty much is going to take the bomb into and put onto Ego's brain matter. He's like, Okay, Celestials are pretty much essentially the gods of the Marvel universes, and they can die. Granted, it's a very hard and complex process to do because they're usually super powerful. But we see that Ego is just a brain in the center. You strap something that's pretty much like a nuke to that, and you're kind of going to fuck it up completely. So, of course, we see that's going on. We see that Mantis is trying to make Ego sleep, but gets knocked out. So we see Peter pretty much use the power that is within Ego's world as well to kind of fight him. And pretty good fight scene to kind of keep everything together is that he's keeping Ego from actually trying to get there. We see Yondu kind of like staying down and trying to help keep everybody alive. And we get Nebula and Gamora kind of getting up top with, of course, Kraglin's escape plan because he's got the ship that's down there now. Then we get Rocket up there. He gives Yondu one spacesuit and one flight suit because they'd given that one to Drax to get Mantis up as well. He's like, my nipples! And flying up. And then we see that Groot is able to push the button. He gets out with Rocket and everything. And everybody's up top except Peter. And we see the explosion start to happen. And he loses his celestial powers and everything. And he's pretty much ready to die at this point. But Yondu comes, puts the spacesuit on him, and flies him out of orbit. And we get a nice touching end to that. He's like, listen, that dude might have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy. And seeing that touching moment between Peter and Yondu as Yondu dies was pretty cool. So then we see that they kind of just give a nice funeral to Yondu, do a Ravager's funeral, and we find out that towards the end, Yondu was not cool with what was going on with Ego, with taking all these kids, because he was the one that was putting them there. And all the Ravagers found out about this and kind of like, and after his death, to kind of like give him the due that he has, that he was having coming to him. Because he wasn't as bad of a guy as others were led to believe. Yeah, he did accept money to bring children to pretty much die to that place, but he made up for it in the end by saving one of the children and, of course, being instrumental in stopping the monster from continuing that practice. And it was cool to see, like, all these different people, and then see, like, Sylvester Stallone and Ving Rhames and all these other people, like, gather up and become another kind of Guardians crew getting ready to do a heist, because we see that in the end credits scene. We see Kraglin get the Mohawk from Yondu and kind of using that. We see that Yondu has got another kind of an MP3 player for Peter, which was a Microsoft Zune, which I found hilarious because it's like, you got the Walkman. It's like, oh, they're probably going to give him an iPod, no? Oh, no, that's a Microsoft Zune that can hold 300 songs. It's like, it's funny. He doesn't know the Earth technology. It's like, 300 songs? Dude, you really need to get back to Earth because you can have a lot more than that. And just seeing all the characters be like, okay, and having that unspoken moment with Peter and Gamora that we've been seeing going throughout the rest of the film and everything, her telling him about that he's already got a family and thought that he knew that, and him just actually coming to terms with that. It's like, cool, alright, we're actually having good character development. And it's like, alright, so we end it and we see some more end credit scenes. We see the High Priestess is creating Adam, which is of course the reference to Adam Warlock, who is connected to the Soul Infinity Stone. So we'll have to see how that works. I think it's been shifted more towards the Vision with the Mind Stone, but that's going to be cool. We see, of course, Sylvester Stallone's group getting ready to do their heist. We see Stanley talking to the Watchers, which is a pretty cool scene. Like, they watch over all the events of the Marvel Universe and seeing him talk to all this stuff, kind of weaving his cameos together. We see an adolescent Groot talking to Peter Quill, with him being a typical teenager, room messy and everything, playing games, and Peter's like, wow, I totally get Yondu now. And that's kind of where it's set up, and they're talking about, like, the Guardians will of course return, because we're going to get a third one, and we're going to see the whole, like, at least the main Guardians within the Avengers, because Thanos is their biggest villain as well. And I overall liked how they were able to weave everybody and have their own kind of story moments, seeing like Rocket come to terms and try not to be as much of a dick at the end, see that the Sovereign people were bested and trying to kind of like figure out what to do, see the Ravagers are not as bad as you would think, because even they were like, Yondu, you can't do this shit with kids. And then, of course, at the end, you figure out that Yondu tried to stop that stuff with the kids and see Peter accept the family he's got and figure out that, yeah, sometimes you've got blood relatives, but sometimes they're not really your family. Sometimes your family is the people that you're with and who you choose to be around, like Yondu and Gamora and Drax and Groot and Rocket and Mantis and all that. So I overall really like the movie and am interested to see where these characters are going to be within the Avengers and in Guardians 3 and how they're going to tie up with Thanos, because Thanos has pretty much been the overhanging part for the Avengers, but a real big part of the Guardians. So those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.